open it up to questions.
Hi. Typically, what is the background of a ham in India? Are they from a technical side? How do they get interested in ham radio? That's one question. The other is the test itself. You did say that there's been an easing of qualification. My question is, are the tests in India multiple choice or of the essay type? Back to you, sir.
Yeah. So first, to answer your last question, now the questions are of MCQ. It's all about multiple choice questions. And who can qualify for this exam? Anyone of 12 years of age can appear for this examination. So when we talk about 12 years of age, this basically covers the basic of radio or the elementary science from the 8th standard, 7th or 8th standard. So, and at the same time, they have to know the entire telegraph rules or the basic QSO codes for appearing, or that's the syllabus for this examination. Previously, it used to be like the essay type as you asked. So that has become some help for people. And previously, it used to be in English only, the basic questions. Now the government is contemplating to spread and bring it in the local languages as well, as far as the examinations are concerned. Examinations are like about an hour. It comprises of 100 marks, and the examination duration is around 1 hour type. Two parts to it. 50% of the questions is based on the wireless telegraph rules, and 50% of the question is on the basics of science, the propagation, the elementary science or the maths questions that we have here. Around 100 questions that are there, MCQ, you have to score 80% in overall to be qualified. So, or the pass the exam. So it is not by leniency. It does not mean that the pass grades have been reduced to like 30% or the 40%. It still remains one of the steepest. Kind of 80% is the qualifying marks. So then you get the license. The, talking about the background of this ham radio operators, who are this background? So primarily from the community that I belong, from the DXing community or the broadcast DXing community. Eventually, we migrated to, or getting migrated to amateur radio as a hobby, as the DXing, the broadcast bands are getting dried up. There are very far less station for us to explore. The only station probably you could hear without any effort is the China Radio International, which is covered all across the band. So there is not much of interest left behind. So amateur radio gives us an opportunity to explore the various digital modes apart from those DXing. So we are primarily into listening or sending QSLs, and now with the affordability, with cheap HF sets available in the market, or the import, ease of import. So previously we have to depend on some third party supplier for import and pay hefty duties, the imports being lenient now, or the government been waiving off the import duties to a certain extent on the ham radio equipments. So that has been quite helpful for any amateur radio operator to practice it per se. Not only getting the license is important, it is practicing which is important. Getting radio equipment was kind of difficult. Getting a license, then forex and everything, arranging through third party, and it would take long time to get those equipment. Probably those could not even be verified in case of, or you cannot probably repair in case of any technical glitch whatever found in. So overall, this all contributed to the upsurge of the amateur radio in India. The another segment which is coming up is the volunteers or the social workers, who are more into helping the community, or the social workers in the remote part for establishing communication in case of disaster. So especially in the remote areas, we are promoting the amateur radio operators are coming up, where we find, say, in the coastal belt, during any natural calamity like cyclone, storm, those are the belt which are getting affected in the first line. So with the local authorities or the NDRF, as we call it here, National Disaster Relief Force. So these institute and coupled with the local agencies, these clubs are spreading the amateur radio aspect among the various schools or the local clubs to spread it. Now, it has been quite eye-opener for them also, because we are now heavily dependent on the mobile and internet for any kind of communication. In couple of years, it has been proven that the mobile network is the first thing which is to be affected during any such calamity. So mobile is being replaced by the amateur radio handsets in these remote areas. So this is the second segment of the population who are getting interested. In cities, particularly in the urban area, so you could find people or the students getting mostly hooked up with the video games or like internet or the social media. So as various science clubs are also approaching these radio clubs to give a different dimension or a different hobby aspect. It's different from like stamp collecting or playing video games or reading books. A different dimension where you can experiment with various things, you can set up your own station, you can communicate all throughout the world. So that's the dimension that's being put forward to, and that's the segment which is getting into this hobby.
Wow.
So
That's a great answer. So, I've got a follow up here, Sandipan. Just in terms of looking at the examination requirements, is there a test pool of questions like there is here in the United States? And how long do the questions last before the test pools change? Is that an understandable question? Is there a group
yeah,
of questions that you can study for? I guess the other question too is, I'm trying to compare, I guess, the Indian licensing requirement with what I know about the RSGB in the UK. For the equivalent of a foundation license or to get started in amateur radio, do you have to go in front of an examiner, or do you just take it as sort of like a written test as they do here in the US?
so for how is the exams organized here? Like, you have to go to the local monitoring station. So before that, you have to apply whenever you are ready for that examination. You have to apply for that given format and everything, deposit certain fees that varies like 100 rupees, which is equivalent of $1.25 approx. That's the examination fee here. Okay. And when we have, say, a requisite number of applications, say 15, 20 odd applications, then depending upon the availability of the resources, this monitoring stations, the wireless monitoring stations of Government of India, they organizes these examinations. Now coming on to the question pattern, the question pool. Now this, there is no definite question pool or question bank which one can resort into. It is the technical person or the director or the technical person at that monitoring station who prepares the question himself, and this questions varies from every time. So you will not find a definite pattern. Okay, there are set of XYZ pattern or this pool from here you can study. You have to be prepared from every angle or anything. So
That
that
seems
is
to be
what,
very similar to the UK model. So,
yes. So it has been primarily taken over from the UK because India under the British rule
sure.
or formed at that point in time. So it definitely follows some trail from the British set rules.
Thank you. Other questions for Sandipan?
I have a quick question.
This is?
Nomar, NP4H.
Oh, NP4H. Sorry, no more.
Good evening, Sandipan. Thank you very much for a very, very instructive presentation for us here. Talking now in terms of operation, and say a U.S. amateur radio operator wants, since there is a reciprocal bilateral agreement between the U.S. and India to operate over there, how difficult or how easy is it to get a permit to operate in India if one of us were to visit your country?
Until 2 years back, I would say it would be very difficult to get a license because you have to apply through various government missions, your itinerary and stuff. Then you have to depend upon the local clubs for this licensing part. But of late, they have put it into a online mode as well for the benefit of the larger section. However, this online things is still under development. There are certain glitches which comes and goes. So probably you still have to fall back on the local amateur radio club for this licensing or the reciprocal license. And it takes couple of months definitely, as far as my knowledge goes. My fellow friend Victor Uniform 2 Uniform Tango, who is much more experienced in this, if he can throw much insight, is a veteran on this part. Victor Uniform 2 Uniform Tango, Sudipta, if you can just pitch in. Sudipta, we have one question here. How difficult is it to get a reciprocal license, or how easy it is to get a reciprocal license here in India currently? So as I was saying, it is now made online, but then again, you have to fall back on some of the Indian clubs to get a reciprocal license and get through the verification process. Any more inputs on that if you have with regard to that? The question was, how easy or difficult is it to get a reciprocal license here in India? So with online modes getting opened up, but there are still some technical glitches and manual verification process is still there. So you have to approach the Indian mission for certain assistance, and you definitely have to have some reference in local amateur radio operator who can further assist you in getting a reciprocal license. That's the input that I have. Any further insight into it apart from this, if you have anything to add over here?
No, it is very simple. In most of the cases, there is no check of backgrounds or like that. It is just easy to approach and get the reciprocal license.
Okay, so
It's very easy.
Out further.
Yes.
Okay. Nomar, I believe that answers. So I was referring to my past experience from which I told. So I think that's further eased out here with the online modes coming in. No further verifications required. Get a reciprocal license.
Excellent. Thank you very much to
Perfect.
both of you, gentlemen. Thank you. Much appreciated.
Yeah. Other questions for our speaker? Sandipan, I have a question. Going back to, I guess, the beginning of your presentation, when you were sort of talking about some of the DX, okay, that you can hear from where you are. I mean, I just sort of sense of, equating it to geography. We're here just outside of New York, and Chicago is about 2,000 kilometers to our west. Okay, and I guess if I'm looking in terms of broadcast band DXing, 400 meters, that type of thing, 770 kilohertz, that type of thing. Is that, I mean, most of the good AM DX is probably in a circle, about 2,000 kilometers. You can hear KMOX in St. Louis, a little bit further out, just given the conditions here in New York. Can you equate some of the distances that you're talking to, being a DXer in Calcutta, and some of the places that you can hear?
So we can hear stations as far as France or the Germany from here in Kolkata. That would be like, the distance would be like more than 10,000 kilometers or 10 to 15,000 kilometers that we could hear. And these transmitters are like more than 500 kilowatt transmitters, which is particularly directed at, say, South Asia or the Asian continent or the African continent, depending upon the broadcast condition or the antenna that we put up. So we are able to pick up stations like from Africa, which is the predominantly the targeted zone for any of the shortwave broadcasters of late or in the late 2020. And
okay, yeah, and you're talking specifically shortwave here, not necessarily medium wave, right?
Medium wave. So
medium wave.
If you talk about the medium wave, we could hear from the eastern part of India to the West in most of the given conditions with some good antenna or the weather conditions. But generally, and the quality of the receiver also plays a significant part. So that's another. So like the Chinese made receivers which are available in the side shops and everything, so probably you could hear the local stations only. But the one with the higher configuration or the premium quality build, definitely without much of effort, we could hear into the distances like more than 500 kilometers or 1000 kilometers per se without any effort. Obviously, that needs to be coupled with favorable conditions without much of a pollution or the noise pollutions in particular, or the light pollution in particular in the city conditions. So as in city conditions, if I talk about my place or my QTH in particular, the things have gone from bad to worse and it's further deteriorating. So with industries, heavy pollution, unlike US or any other countries, there are like emission checks. So these are not like very prevalent here, with like cheap Chinese lamps coming in, no RF control, that plays havoc on the broadcasting. So as a listener, so hardly we could hear now more than say 100 200 odd kilometers in medium wave.
Very good. Thank you. I've got another question that's come over to me. Back to licensing and examination. Are there manuals or books that you can study before you put yourself in front of an examiner?
On the regulation part, so as I said, there are two parts to it. One is the regulation part, another is the basic science part. So until some time back, there was no definite course material available with for that. So National Institute of Amateur Radio, or the NIAR, they have come up with a book called, or the study manual, or there are books like ABC of Amateur Radio, which is very popular among the aspirants, which is available at locally. But if you find in the internet, you probably might not find it, because that is not so hot selling kind of an item which should be there on internet. So people are still trying to put it back on internet for sale.
And
So
those manuals are in English or
yes.
Okay, all in English right currently now.
Yes, the examinations are still conducted in English. So there are propositions been given to the government to put it in local language, but until now it's in English. The manuals are still in English. So two parts to the examination regulations, which they have incorporated in this manual. It's this straightforward, the regulations that has been printed as is, which comes with certain elaborations, and the basic science parts or the maths, which has been put into. The manuals are roughly like 50 to 80 odd pages, the small A5 size manuals, the booklet, if you can talk about.
Thank you. Other questions from the group? We're sort of watching our time here.
Maximum power that you can transmit in India.
Good question.
The power which is allowed on the HF band is 400 watts
100 watts.
in HF. So that's the
Okay.
permissible.
Thank you.
That is again for the general grid users.
Other questions?
N2A AM.
Go ahead, Dave.
Okay, what is the prevalence of repeaters on VHF and UHF in India? I would assume in the cities primarily, but what is the repeater infrastructure like over there?
Okay, so in city conditions, in the major cities or the state capitals, what we have at least one or two repeaters established by the local clubs. But if you go into the remote areas, this is yet to catch up. These VHF and UHF repeaters are primarily in the city conditions, or the main urban areas only. And there is another application called Ecolink, which is getting quite popular here in India, where Ecolink application or the VHF repeater is also hosted on the Ecolink server. So where you can simultaneously have the regular on-air interaction with a Ecolink user as well. So that has been catching up of late. There are quite a net. These nets are now putting up the Equalink nodes as well. So from the city where I belong, Calcutta, here we have 2 repeaters which is currently active. There were like 4 repeaters in total. One of the repeaters, they are in totality into the VHF mode only, which is operated by the BARS, as we call it, the Bengal Amateur Radio Society. The another club, which is known as the West Bengal Radio Club, the Victor Uniform 2 Whiskey Bravo, they have interface in the Equalink as well. So they have the local net 9 p.m. to 9:30 p.m., 30 minutes net local time that I am talking about, which is also available in the Equalink, so which is in the Equalink node VU2WBR-R. So that's how the repeater scenes are. How frequently are these nets conducted? Mostly it is done on the weekends only, given the working conditions of the people or the time availability. Unlike in US where you have definite working hours, so like 4 p.m. or 5 p.m. post which like every work gets off. So here in there is nothing such regulated. So probably we get off at around 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. Then we have travel back home, which takes around say hour, 2 hours time. Then we get to sit with our radio sets. So which is often at the late at night. So 9 p.m., 10 p.m. onwards, that's the ideal time, but the local nets are conducted. And weekly nets are generally on the weekends. They're the nets in say Pune, or in New Delhi we have VU2 Fund repeater that is again connected to Equalink node, where we have the nets again on Saturdays in the from 9 to 10 p.m. local time, Indian time. So that is how the repeaters scene is. How many check-ins generally a repeater gets? How much do they accommodate? What's the kind of check-in? So in 30 minutes time, and depending upon the proficiency of the net controller, we have around 30 to 35 check-ins in around 30 minutes time. So if it's a 1 hour time and being handled by 2 net controllers, it goes up to 80, 85 check-ins on any normal day. It's special net, uh, so the duration increases as traffic increases. More than 100 it goes. So that's the uh, net or the VHF net scenario. UHF is not that popular here on per se net or communication per se. It's primarily the VHF or the 2 meter band which is quite popular here, and specifically with the handies which are largely available. So the Baofeng sets are now available for roughly 20 USD, equivalent of 20 USD. So people are, and the recent the regulations which came up around year and a half here in India, until now you have to so you are allowed to operate only from the licensed address. So any change in address you or any change of location, you have to get a separate permission from the WPC. Now that has been relaxed, so you can use your handy, or you can mount your station and from operate any part of the geography, unless that geography is not restricted area. So that has largely contributed into this net's flourishing in terms of chickens are concerned. Back to
Okay,
you.
thank you very
That's
much.
thank you. Other questions for Sandipan? I have another. Okay, don't.
Please.
I just sort of going back to just sort of broadcast band DXing and SWLing, that type of thing. I know, like if I were just 10 years ago here in the States, it would be very common to go into an electronics store, okay, and see broad or shortwave receivers as part of an AM/FM combination. And I know you mentioned Texans, that type of thing as a brand. If are shortwave broadcast radios common if I went into a store, or something that I would have to order from Alibaba or Amazon, that type of thing?
So the import mode only one-on-one. Radio primarily as a broadcast mode of communication was quite popular, and the television was not in its peak. Now we have televisions like cables, like the satellite televisions all over. You find the antennas everywhere. So if we talk about the TV and radio comparison, and why radio is quite popular until some time back here in India, and it's still popular in the rural areas.
Mhm.
It's still equivalently popular because if we talk about the farmers, okay, they have to travel a quite a distance. No, they do not have this luxury of their cars or anything. So they have their bicycles or their cart or the common transport where they get as a mode of transportation. So where for them the mode of entertainment, communication, news, anything. So the radio is one of the primary source of information for them. So for which if you go into a local electronic store today in a city, you won't find a radio set. But if you move out of the city, you'll still find a radio store in a local electric shop. Another thing which is quite noticeable, we have our radio sets, we have TV sets. So within warranty, if something goes wrong, we call upon the technician, they come up and repair it. So for radios, probably we used to throw it away and get a new one. But in the urban areas, there are like the radio repair shops as well. So anything goes wrong with that radio, say for about a radio of $10, there are technicians available to get it repaired for $1 or so. So in fact, one of the very oldest radio repair shops still there at Kolkata, where that gentleman's been repairing the old radio sets from the say 1930s, 1940s, is still repairing. You could find this video in the YouTube as well, and it's being covered at times in the local media. So availability, the basic radio sets will not find much in the city. You go to the rural area, yes, you will definitely find it. High-end radio sets, you have to depend only on the portals like Alibaba, and to certain extent like now Amazon, there are sellers who put up those radio sets or help in easy imports. So that's the only mode to get those high-end sets like Texan or XH Data or Eaton.
Yes. Perfect. Thank you. Other questions for Sandipan? I know we're running a little long, but thank you for giving us some additional time. I guess I have one final question. You mentioned early on in your presentation about a DXpedition to the Andaman Islands. How do we get to go?
So first of all, for Andaman, you have to have special permit, not just getting a tourist visa. You won't be allowed to go into Andamans. So specifically, you have to mention Andaman. That's it. So rest about radio equipments and everything. Andaman is quite tricky. We have been contemplating of Andaman DXpedition for quite some time now, because that geography is kind of strategically very critical to the government of India or the
Yes. Mhm.
so we have like Thailand nearby or the Sri Lanka nearby, where the Chinese vessels keep on moving the military vehicles and everything. We have stations, military stations over there. So yes, we are exploring the opportunity to go into Andaman, but again that depends on the permits as well, or the arranging the equipments locally, because taking it through flight, then again it calls for the security clearance and everything. So it's work in progress. Anything we'll definitely put up on our club magazine, that's Asian DX review, or and in our club website. So any interested person can join us in that DXpedition. Quite a beautiful
Oh,
location that Andaman is. Quite a beautiful. People who have been
good
to
luck in
Andaman,
making it happen. We'll be paying attention to it, I'm sure. So,
yeah,
yeah.
definitely.
Are there any other questions for Sandipan before I turn it back to Nomar? Thank you for a marvelous presentation, Sandipan. This has just been absolutely spectacular. And Sudipta, thank you for your help as well, too. I know this is early morning for you, so thank you for your generous allotment of time that you've given us. WX2R
Until we meet again. Good night, everybody.
73s.